Krios and Vault Minor have agreed to a ceremony of reconciliation. Riker makes it a policy to never open another man's gift. And Beverly offers a penny even though she doesn't have one. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
Brooklyn Dodgers #1 fan. My name is Ryan T. Huskin. Today, we are doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 5, Episode 21, The Perfect Mate. Story by Renee Echevarria and Ruben Leder. Teleplay by Ruben Leder and Michael Piller. Maybe it's Leader. Directed by our pal Cliff Bull. This was April 25th, 1992. Where were you? We've got a very special guest today, everybody. Can you believe it? Star Trek documentarian. You know all of his Star Trek documentaries, so many of them. His name is Dave Zappone. How are you today, Dave?
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Sirach. And Sirach, you of all people know the talent of Renee Echevarria. I mean, my God, what a writer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic writer. He went on to do a lot of stuff for Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
And, we're always going to have tremendous praise for the work that he has done. And this episode is, it's right there with me. I thought it was captivating and interesting. I didn't find myself kind of like saying, okay, when is this going to end type of deal. I thought the performance was great and the writing was great in this episode. What about you?
Same here, 100%. I have a soft spot for Renee. He was in our writer's room, of course, on DS9, the doc.
Everybody at home, Dave Zappone, of course, is the executive producer of What We Left Behind, the Deep Space Nine documentary, The Captains, the upcoming, current, I should say, Voyager
documentary. Life, Still Kicking, For What We Love of Spock.
For the Love of Spock, yeah. So many things. Yeah. So anyway, you were saying about Renee and the writer's room.
Ira, because I'm such good friends with Ira loves Renee. And Renee really shines in this. And Sirach, correct me if I'm wrong, or Ryan, but I think his first episode was The Offspring.
I know he did do that one. I don't know if it's his first. I'll check.
I believe it was his first, and I want to say it was a spec. And it just set the template because you had a lot of testosterone in that DS9 room, and TNG to an extent.
Confirmed. And The Offspring was first.
Renee was the sensitivity, and without being maudlin. And that's what I thought this episode pulled off more than anything. But I got to tell you before I forget, my favorite joke and how it got past the censors, I don't know, in 92, she's hits on Riker in her quarters. Mm-hmm. And Riker doesn't say a word, just holodeck 4. Because I think we all knew what he needed.
Yes, I caught that too, David.
Did you catch that?
I caught it and I was thinking,
wait, what was it that he did?
Oh, when he breaks, when he breaks from
yes, and he said when he says I'll be in holodeck 4. I agree. Yes. I wrote that in my notes. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe. And actually, I wrote in my notes what he's going to do in holodeck 4, but I'm not going to repeat it here.
Yeah, of course.
That's outrageous.
Yeah, we know. He had to blow off some steam, man. He got way worked up on that. He's like Riker to bridge. Forget whatever's going on right now.
Don't bother me.
I need 30 minutes.
That is quite possibly the only time in Star Trek history that a joke of that nature has been made.
Certainly in the original, the classic Star Treks, yeah.
I think that's the only one. I mean, maybe Lower Decks. I don't know.
Maybe Lower Decks, but certainly, how that made it past, all the executives, all the double checking that goes on.
Well, I think it's a testament to Jonathan Frakes because he was so subtle about it. It wasn't like, I'll be in holodeck 4. He was nice and subtle and calm. So,
it leaves a little to the imagination.
Correct.
Right. So it's not right on the nose. It's just off that you can just say, oh, I know what's going on
But
here.
Jonathan
I
Frakes
almost fell
is
out of
such a
bed.
phenomenal. Jonathan Frakes is such a phenomenal actor that he told us everything we needed to know
Yeah.
in that scene with his eyes.
His eyes, exactly. I thought the same thing. His look, and Patrick Stewart too. They could do so much just with their face, their expression, without saying a word.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, so obviously, Dave, about Riker's sexual prowess and how
I do.
how
Prowess.
Not personally.
not personally, but we've seen the episodes. He definitely not shied about pulling the trigger. And I thought in this moment, I was like, this is a bad thing, right? Like I was like, oh God, this is bad for Riker. Please keep him away. Because you could see it right away from literally from the first close up that he got where his eyes kind of wide.
Yeah. And the other thing was Data was a riot. What does he say? Things were getting a bit ebullient.
Yeah, I was like, I don't even know that word, but I wrote it down just so that I could look it up later.
Oh, no, I knew the word. But who did it take is interesting because if you think about it, this is now being nerdy. Data could outfight Worf,
yes,
I believe, but it took Worf to disperse those aliens.
Yeah. Well, Data's not as intimidating as Worf.
No.
He may be stronger and he might, but he's so, polite, matter of fact, and just robotic that he's not going to be able to project that kind of intimidation that Worf does.
Yeah, Worf definitely. So does Michael Dorn. I mean, he's such a nice guy, but boy, is he's got an intimidating presence. Like Avery, there are just certain people that just intimidate you, and without trying. And Michael's one of them.
Michael's one of them. I thought something was interesting, and I don't know if you caught this same thing, but with the makeup job on this Kamala character, looked very much like the Trill spots that we see on Dax.
They did. I noticed that. I said, "Is she a Trill?"
That was the first Trill, even though we saw different makeup on a Trill in an earlier season of Next Generation. It's funny that they basically just turned the Trill into this.
Yes. And the only thing
I'm going to give you guys a scoop. We're interviewing LeVar Burton with Michael Westmore on Wednesday, and I will ask Michael if there was any connection there with the Trill.
It has to be. The only difference that I saw was that the spots went towards the back. Mm-hmm. They came down the side and went towards her back, as opposed to Dax is going down her side all the way. So but
actually,
still
all the way down. I think we found out in one episode.
But they look identical otherwise in nature and color.
Pattern. Yes, and where they start from, like they emanate from here, coming down. So initially, I thought this is like a Trill type character. I was slightly confused, but then of course, what I was highlighting in this particular observation was the attraction that eventually becomes Dax and Worf was kind of essentially alluded to in that small scene there of with the growling and Data in that bar at 10 Forward. Oh, yeah. It was kind of like that's the kind of person that Worf is attracted to.
He likes spots, man.
He likes the spots. He and eventually, I mean, also brunette. There's several things that are, she's tall, brunette.
She was very tall, and
so I think we found Worf's type. I think Worf's type is this character, which eventually becomes Dax. I thought that
would have worked. But I'll ask you guys a fanboy question. What did you think of in season 7, Worf and Troy getting together, and then by Nemesis, Riker and Troy are getting married?
Dave, Sirach hasn't seen that yet.
I haven't seen any of that.
So he'll have to tell you next year. We're going through this
DS9
episode by episode. So we're at the end
we're
of season
watching
5.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing it. We're getting it
Well,
done.
look, anytime you guys want to, I'm like Star Trek nerd to the nth degree. So anytime you need help, I'm
That's
here.
another TNG episode we just did, the nth degree.
Oh, the nth
I
degree.
needed actually help with a little reminder on the Offspring. What so remind me of what
Oh,
that was
God,
when
the
Data
Offspring.
had a child. Remember? He created that child and she died in
Lol.
that same episode.
Oh
She couldn't
yeah.
handle her newfound emotions. And again, I'll give you a spoiler. I like you. You guys are two of my favorite people in Star Trek, by the way. Michael Westmore is most proud. And Brian, you can discuss Michael Westmore, who he is most proud of that makeup. I don't know if you remember, there was a non-gender robot version.
Right. We had that actor on our show.
Leonard Crowfoot.
Yeah, Leonard Crowfoot. We had him on our show. He was amazing. And so Michael Westmore was most proud of that. Is that right? We've had Michael on our show a few times.
Absolutely most proud of that.
Wow, that's cool.
Okay, so that's interesting because we just reviewed another episode, Cost of Living.
Yeah.
Oh, another good one with the bubble.
With the bubble guy, yes. And in that episode, there was a dancer that was I guess partially or almost completely nude, but had a body paint, full head to toe body paint. Something like that is something I would think that Westmore or even the alien in that had a nose that wrapped around the back of his head. There were some interesting aliens in that. And I think they won a couple Emmys for that makeup job.
Michael Westmore has 1 Academy Award, and don't quote me, I believe 9 Emmys.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well deserved. Yeah. And we just got news, and God, I wish I could. I promise you guys, when Westmore comes out, I'll come on.
Well, Dave, why don't you tell everybody what you're talking about? What's Westmore?
Yeah.
Okay. Michael Westmore is an Academy Award-winning makeup artist whose 5 uncles before him. So Michael's 87 and doing great, by the way. Every single studio from the 30s on was run by the makeup department, run by a Westmore. So we're talking Gone with the Wind. We're talking the 10 Commandments. I mean, Jerry Lewis film, you name it. It was a Westmore. And so Michael started out on the Munsters, believe it or not, with Butch Patrick. And he worked on Star Trek, Sirach, you remember, 17 years, I think?
Yes.
Not that you were there for 17 years, but all the series, all the movies during the TNG era. And he is just a phenomenal man. And I was interviewing him.
For what project?
Voyager. To what you're wearing, to the journey.
The Voyager documentary.
I still have my Nana love.
I'm trying to lean into the Westmore documentary.
Yeah, well, there's several documentaries.
Spun out. I love them all, guys. You know, they're all still selling. They're all successful. I'm very happy. What shocks me is studios don't seem to want to do them, and it seems to be left to me and Ira to do these things, and they're nothing but successful. Right. But Michael Westmore, we're doing a full documentary called Makeup Man. And Ryan, when does this episode drop?
This is going to be, well, it drops twice. The first segment, this one drops in towards the end of May, mid to end of May.
Oh God, I'm going to get you a trailer.
Then the full thing is going to be out in a month later.
Can you show a trailer?
Of course.
All right, I'll send you a Westmore trailer. But we have had, and Sirach, you'll get a kick out of this. From your cast, we had Jeff Combs. We had Armin Shimmerman. We had Terry Farrell. And again, unfortunately, you didn't make the cut because you really wore no makeup. You know?
They didn't need to touch that beautiful face.
Our human characters didn't fare so well. But we have every single TNG actor except for Marina because she's in London. But it's my backdoor TNG documentary. But as I started to say before, we just got a yes from 2 non-Star Trek, huge A-listers. So it's more than Star Trek.
Can you tell us who they are yet?
No.
Ooh.
Yeah, yes. No, we can't spoil it.
Rock, you know, you can't.
You don't want
until it's on celluloid or tape.
Yeah.
We really have to be careful. But let me just say they are. If you
names.
three. If you researched his career, you probably have a pretty good guess.
Yeah. Yeah, Michael Westmore. It has worked. If you just look at some of the pictures that he has done in films, and he's worked on some amazing projects. So I'm sure there's a multitude of actors that not only familiar with him, but are more than willing to celebrate him and his work, because it helped them in their career as well.
Correct. And I met Shatner's people yesterday. We were donating a whole bunch of his crew jackets to the Hollywood Charity Horse Show, which is at the end of May. I highly recommend people go. And he donated, because they love my daughter, she's 5, an original merry-go-round horse.
Oh.
Just to give her, to be, just because they're great.
Good people.
So I can't say enough about Michael. And To the Journey, I'm working on sales on that now. I'm hoping for a Fathom release, which means it'll be in theaters all over the world. Reviews have been terrific. I got the entire cast with the exception of Jennifer Lean, who retired 20 years ago, unfortunately. Everything keeps moving.
That's pretty awesome. Everybody go check out the Voyager documentary. Of course, something that I had the pleasure of working with Dave on this. What a delight that
Ryan,
was.
Ryan, kudos.
Yes.
Hang on, Ryan, kudos.
Thank you.
Ryan Husk is responsible for the most successful crowdfunding documentary campaign in history.
Which was pretty awesome.
My friend Sirach is a professor.
That's right. This guy's doling out compliments. Thanks, Dave.
Let's not just speak on that.
I know you do a lot more
right.
of it, Sirach. I can only imagine our mutual friend Avery Brooks is more than proud of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's always been. But I do want to just talk about that achievement that Ryan was able to do with the Voyager documentary, and I'm glad that it's become something that has gotten to its final stages now, and people are
pretty awesome.
Eagerly anticipating. So congratulations on that. What is the normal time frame that it takes you to go from start to finish on a project like a documentary?
Well, Shatner was a taskmaster, so that was a year, essentially, nonstop. Shatner brooked no delays. But to give you an example, Leonard died, Nimoy, during the filming of Spock, and unfortunately we had a delay. But we got it done in a little over a year. Ira and I joke, because he had Outlander, I had Spock. We took 6 years for that.
Wow.
This one's 5. But we also had a 2-year LA shutdown. We had
the writers' strikes.
Two strikes. So it was very, very difficult. But it's done.
That's awesome. So, and many more to come. I'm very much looking forward to the Westmore documentary. But Dave, since we only have you for a few more minutes, let's talk a bit more about this episode, because there's something that I've been curious about since before we even hit record, but I didn't want to ask until we actually did. My question to you is, you're like a lifelong Star Trek fan. You've seen these episodes a million times. I mention one word about an episode, you name the episode. So my question to you is, when you first saw this episode, you had a certain impression of it, and subsequent times after that. Then you watched it again just now for this review. What has changed as far as your perception of this episode, your opinion of this episode? Have you noticed anything new or appreciated anything new from it?
Well, one thing, it's kind of general. I had a talk with Jonathan Frakes, the two of us personally, and he couldn't believe that my 5-year-old daughter watched every single episode of TNG. And what he said was, what about the pacing? Like, how do kids today? But what I told him is that what people forget, more so I believe than the newer series, I know that might get me in trouble, but certainly not DS9. DS9 was a family. They're a family. She responds to the family aspect. Even in this episode, there's some adult overtones, but the reason why she loves these shows is their family. And there's no swear. I just got to ask this. I did another podcast yesterday, and people are like, why on Patreon are you not dropping the F-bomb? I said, you know what? I'm a dad. I grew up watching Star Trek with my father. And I want to be able to watch something with my daughter. And we turned on the new Picard, and I love Patrick Stewart. He's a personal friend. So is Frakes. And the violence, the swearing, I can't watch it with my daughter. And to me, I don't like that. So one thing about The Perfect Mate is you can watch it with a child. You can explain the issues, and they're delicately dealt with. But that would be my main observation. Mm-hmm. And I think that held true all the way through Deep Space Nine, as a matter of fact, and Voyager. And Enterprise.
Thank you. I was waiting for Enterprise. I was like, come on.
Let's fly. Look, I will be taken in an alley and beaten up. The decon chamber, which, by the way, I'm gonna put you guys on the spot. We kind of want you to be on the show. I know Lolita's already spoken about it, but the four of you, I think, would make a great episode.
Be a ton of fun. Unfortunately, Sirach doesn't want to. I would love to.
We'll find
I'm just kidding. Of course. No, we love those guys. We love Dominic. We love
Dom and Connor.
So yes, of course it's a yes.
Anytime we're ready to make that happen.
Yeah, I want you guys on it.
I want to talk to you, Dave, about the observation you made about Mr. Renee Echevarria. And that is about the emotional sensitivity that he has and that he brought to Deep Space Nine and now into this episode and also to the episode Offspring. And I think that's a very great observation. But I'd like to ask you, because of your personal relationship with him, what do you think it is about him that has this level of sensitivity to emotions, to these kinds of stories that don't deal necessarily with the fighting and rough and tough,
the sci-fi, the fighting,
but more towards the emotional state of a human being and what their goals are in life, if they're happy in that position. Mm-hmm. It seems like Renee has now, at least in these first two episodes, has really honed in on that. What do you think it is about him that does that emphasizes that?
Well, Sirach, I think we as men, 3 men on this podcast, get a really bad rap. And I think we all have that innate sensitivity. Believe it or not, my favorite episode have you guys done the original series yet?
We're actually doing it with Walter right now.
Yeah.
So it depends on which one you're talking about.
House. We just interviewed Walter at his home.
He told me.
What a guy. I got stories I could tell you off the air.
That's well done.
Yeah. No, I think my favorite episode of the original series is the Paradise Syndrome. What a beautiful episode where Kirk falls in love and loses a child. I mean, how does that not get you?
See, we haven't seen that. We haven't seen that one yet. But it almost sounds a little bit like
a spoiler. The empath, you can cut this out. The empath, the whole episode is the three of them, the big three, sacrificing one of themselves, trying to sacrifice themselves for the other. Have you gotten a Half a Life yet on TNG with David Ogden Stiers?
I believe so. Let me check.
So.
All these names are like
fourth season.
Fourth season,
And then
yes.
before we go, I have one question
we
for the
did.
three of you.
Yeah. We did that one.
I mean, the
Thanksgiving.
sensitivity, Sirach, I just think we all have it in us. And it's a question of whether we're willing to show it.
Mhm.
And Renee was. I was from the Bronx, as we know.
Yeah.
Robert Hewitt Wolf is from Waterbury, Connecticut, my hometown, which is
Yeah,
pretty
you're
rough.
not getting any lovey-dovey stuff from Ira, I can tell you that.
No. Ira and I had screaming matches, but they were always creative. And we always made up after. But boy, did we have our share.
Well, he's passionate about his thoughts, his
That's
point
why
of
you
view.
respect the man.
Yeah, that's why you respect him, because he's going to defend his point of view. He's going to argue his case, but he's also willing to be convinced if your argument is better than his.
You bet.
But
So I think
you got to have
that's
the
what it is.
courage to put it up, though.
I think we're just, as men, maybe we get the reputation, we're afraid, but I think we all have the same emotions in us.
Yeah, I thought this episode was great. Yeah, this episode was great for Picard.
He was phenomenal. Yeah,
it gave him a chance to be human to me, for lack of a better word, because sometimes he is almost more robotic than Data sometimes, just in how he's like, nope, I'm not going to be emotional. I have to, nope. But here he was like, you could see he was fighting and resisting and, really showing a very much resistance.
I'll just tell you guys again, I'm sorry because we got to go, but one interesting anecdote, we interviewed Patrick at his home in England for the captains. At his
great interview.
Home.
Great segment.
Thank you. And I had mentioned in conversation just that I'd seen him on Broadway doing this one-man show for A Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens. And Bill and I were leaving. Bill was in his usual grumpy mood. And Patrick ran out of his home to let me hold the first edition of A Christmas Carol.
Oh.
Just because I mentioned that book. So that is the kind of man Patrick Stewart is.
Hey, can I tell you real quick?
Yeah.
So we had Jonathan Frakes on our show a few weeks back for our 500th episode, Conundrum. We had him for Conundrum. Great, awesome episode.
Great episode.
The reason I'm telling you this is because I mentioned to him one of the parts of that interview with the captains, because he told us about how, Patrick Stewart was like, we're not supposed to have fun and whatever like that. But you guys actually covered that in the captains. And Patrick Stewart tells the story, and William Shatner stops him and he says, they changed you. And he's like, yeah, they did. And I remember when I watched that back in the day, the first time, I was like, that kind of blew me away. I was like, wow, he actually, Patrick Stewart's been interviewed thousands of times, but you could tell something clicked in his mind. Where he was
let
like,
me give you again a 30-second story on that. So, believe it or not, Jonathan Frakes was my first professional interview for Star Trek in 2010. Okay. And it went great, went well. How do you not get along with Jonathan Frakes? But he made it a point. We're walking in the hallway. Sirach, you remember those hallways behind the, the private hallways for the talent. And he said, hey, man, great interview. And that stuck with me 15 years later, because who else would give that kind of affirmation? A director, which is what Jonathan is, a father, a director. So, a lot of good stories. But, okay, last question for me, and then you guys can wrap up. What's your favorite season of Star Trek?
Well, right now we've done all of Deep Space Nine. We're in the second season of the original series. We've done every single episode of the new stuff. We're on the fifth season of Next Generation. So that's the caveat there.
Which used to be my favorite, by the way, along with DS9.
A lot of people say season 5. What do you say, Sirach?
Yeah.
For me, I think it's season 7 of Deep Space Nine for me. No offense to Terry Farrell. I'm not trying to say. I mean, I really just like seasons 4 through 7 of Deep Space Nine. But for me,
first of all, there is no bad Deep Space Nine. Number one.
Yeah.
What do you guys?
I say I got season 5 in Deep Space Nine.
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
A lot of people say that one and a lot of people say season 5 of Next Generation. Season 5 seems to be the hot.
It's been the best so far.
So on our way out now, because I just before you go, Dave, I've got to ask both of you the same question. What did she mean when she said that she bonded with Picard? Are we supposed to think that maybe they humped or something? What I didn't, because she was like.
No, I think she has a window of that whatever that gestation period that they were calling, and that's at some point, if within that whatever 48-hour window or whatever the time frame is, she has to bond with somebody. And I think that time ran out, and she just bonded with Picard based on their conversation.
Because I was like, I thought that he was a gentleman, everything was great, and he left, and everything was cool. But then when she said the bonded thing, I was like, wait, are we supposed to like wonder, like, did they or didn't they? Okay, I got you. That makes sense.
Typical Renee writing. It shows that she's going to have to, unfortunately, suffer, perhaps for the rest of her life, being with this Auric guy because she's bonded on Patrick.
Got it.
Yeah, so she's in a regular marriage like everyone else.
it was a timing thing. Hey. We'll cut that one out of the edit. All right, we better run before we say any worse things.
All right.
Dave Zappone, executive producer of 455 Films. He loves Buicks. Absolutely. He loves Star Trek, and he loves sharing Star Trek documentaries with the world. Thank you very much, Mr. David Francis.
Thank you, guys. I can't wait to see you both in Vegas. I hope.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Oh, yeah, we'll be there.
Everybody stick around. We've got way more to talk about. We'll be right back on
Thank you, guys.
Rule. And we'll see you in Vegas, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th Rule with Sirach, the Game Changer, Lofton.
Hello.
That was a lot of fun with Dave Zappone. Could talk to that guy for hours and hours. Everybody, if you see him at a convention, tell him your favorite Star Trek documentary that he has done of the many that we talked about, and buy him a beer or shake his hand, pat him on the shoulder. He does more for the Star Trek community than almost anybody I know.
Out of the ones that I've seen, though, I can say that I enjoyed pretty much all of them.
Totally.
So, like, What We Left Behind is A+. The Love of Spock was one of the best documentaries I've seen. Loved that, too. I've learned a lot of stuff about that Spock, Live Long and Prosper hand signal. That was in there. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the Captain's documentary was, was great. So
it was way more gripping than I expected. That was the first one I saw. I was like, I just kind of turned it on one time just to kind of see real quick before going to bed. And I was like gripped, especially, that part with Picard, I should say Patrick Stewart, and the part with Avery was just amazing. It was like, because it was at his place in New Jersey. It was beautiful. Anyway, talk about that another time, because it is time for the trivioids of the week, everybody. Krios and Vault Minor have agreed to a ceremony of reconciliation. The Enterprise stopped at Herod 4 to pick up a group of stranded miners. The captain dines alone. The Dolphins are on deck 7. Kamala, now I'm going to forever say that wrong. Kamala could sense Captain Picard's authority. Garuth was loved by Krios and Vault. Riker makes it a policy to never open another man's gift. Ludugiel gold is the purest in the galaxy. Beverly offers a penny to Picard even though she doesn't have one. Picard offers to take off the uniform for Beverly. And Dr. Crusher's shoulder is always there for Captain Picard. All right, so I feel like this is kind of a tough episode because it feels like this poor lady is a piece of meat. It feels like she doesn't really have individuality. And so I kind of dreaded this episode a little bit. Now, because I hadn't seen it in 20 years, now upon watching it now, of course, as you guys mentioned, Renee Echevarria really has heart that he puts into episodes. And one thing that I was reminded of right away when she was basically saying, like, I was bred for this. And they said, well, we can basically save you. You don't have to do this. And she said, no, I want to do this. This is who I am. This is my identity. This is my life. This is what I want to do. It actually reminded me of the Jem'Hadar, because they were born and bred to fight. And there have been many times where, instances where the Federation people would say, well, we know what's better for you. You don't have to. And they're like, no, this is who I am. This is what I do, with very rare instances of them not being that way. But I'm very curious to know, Sirach, your impressions of this episode, because I'm not really 100% sure how I feel about it.
Well, how you feel about it, I think, is, really the voice that Dr. Crusher was playing in this episode.
Totally.
She was playing that voice of
the audience.
That's not right. The audience, right? This is slavery. This is forced servitude. This is captivity. This is doing something against somebody's will. And so those were the arguments that were put forward by, Dr. Crusher, and which did, in fact, penetrate into, Picard's thinking and his perspective, because those words wouldn't escape his head, right? Those thoughts were planted in his psyche, and he had to kind of wrestle with them and answer for himself whether that was truly the case, right? And that's where we see the crux of the story get into him making those suggestions and probing questions and, trying to essentially liberate her, giving her the opportunity to claim asylum or to, be liberated from this responsibility or this obligation. So he was basically telling her, hey, you don't have to do this. You have free will. I will guarantee your safety and your ability to choose in life what it is that is best for yourself. I'm not going to let somebody else choose what is best for you. So if you want to have freedom of movement about the ship, I'm going to delegate that. And so he was doing his best to offer the sense of security that would be necessary for her to claim, herself as a victim of something. And, you find that in domestic violence cases, for example, sometimes the spouse who's being abused is scared to say something, right? Because they're fearful of their own safety and their own life.
Totally.
And so you want to give them the sense of security, like it's okay, you can tell me, what's going on. And you do that with other situations too, involving children, for example. You have to give them a sense of security that it's okay to tell whatever it is that they need to tell. And I think Picard was doing his best to say that in this situation, like, it's all right. The Federation's here. They're regardless of whatever the customs are and the culture that you come from, I'm going to offer you this blanket of security so that you have a sense of asylum.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's basically asylum,
Yes.
Now she obviously refuses it because, in her mind, it's not just what she was bred for, but it's like the highest honor to have her life being worth basically ending this centuries-long war between two worlds. That makes her basically the most important figure in those two people's history. Now, it's kind of a shitty way for it to go down, but in her mind, she's like, I'm a savior. I take this duty to be the highest of importance, even though now she has bonded with Picard, as you and Dave explained to my slow mind. And that time has passed. Now she'll never really fully be able to bond with this guy, even though that's what she does. But she's still going to see this thing through because this is of the utmost importance. So she has a very noble and honorable kind of story of sacrifice in a lot of ways. It's too easy to just say, well, that's what she was bred for. Like, the fact of the matter is she does have free will, And she is choosing this, even if the timing didn't align and the connection doesn't work. So she's actually a very, honorable type of character with a lot of integrity and, a lot of sacrifice. And I thought, by the way, Famke Janssen really acted the hell out of this. There are some moments where she would just stop and make a smile or just say a line. And I was like, wow, she's really good, even this early on in her career. And of course, I thought she was amazing in the X-Men. So I'm already a big fan of hers. But I was like, wow, she's really nailing it.
Yeah. And, Riker was trying not to.
Hey!
So it's But no, I would say that I thought she did a fantastic job in this. There were subtle things in her performance that was just fantastic. Her eyes were full of hope and positivity, and I thought wonder. So I thought she did very great with this role. And just to speak a little bit to what you were talking about with, the kind of decision she was left with at the end, by bonding with Picard, she essentially embodies the same virtues and sensibility and intellect that he has.
Right.
And so whatever he would do in that situation is basically what she decided to do. And that was, I'm going to move forward to ensure the peace of all of these people in this, these two warring factions. And that would be essentially what Picard would want to do, would, see peace as a resolution. And so I thought that was another interesting thing because, she hinted at the end, I hope he likes Shakespeare. She's basically saying, I'm like you now.
Yeah. Yes, that was very good. That's the line that stuck with me too. That also shows to us that, because the whole time the audience is supposed to think, yeah, but it's not real. She's flirting with Riker, but it's not real. It's just what she's made to do. She's flirting with Worf, but that's not real. It's what she's flirting with those ruffians in 10 Forward. She's flirting with, that's just what she does. But that made her, the most human. That was the line where she says, look, what you and I shared was actually real. Because for the rest of his life, he's going to question, he clearly fell for her in a way, and he's going to question, was it real or was it just what she does? You know what I mean? Like, did she actually mean it? And she's basically telling him, yes, it was real. This is the one that got away. And, I'll remember you forever kind of thing. It was actually a really good line.
It was a very beautiful story. It was a nice love story for Picard. Great for him to have this kind of a love story without actually, it being obscene and a Risa type of situation or something more lustful. I think this was actually the resistance of lust, which made it a beautiful kind of story. Picard is going to always wrestle with this. And the other thing I thought was noticeable was that Dr. Crusher was the one that he confided to when he had these feelings about her and was talking to her, talking to Dr. Crusher about how he feels. And I thought, what is it with the guys on the Enterprise that run to the girl that likes them to tell her about the other girl that likes him? It's so weird to me that this keeps happening on this ship. But
those guys are clueless. They don't know what they don't know what they're doing. But that is a very good point. And when he says to Beverly, he's like, "Oh, can I take the uniform off?" I noticed the wording that Renee used. He didn't say, "Can I take my uniform off for a moment?" or "Let's dispose of the uniform." He said, "Can I take the uniform off?" That's vague enough for her to take it as if he's saying, "Can I take your uniform off?" Or even though he's meaning, "Can I take my uniform?" It's like vague enough. That's wordplay for you. Keep it a little vague, word it a little bit differently. And then, of course, she went like John Luke, or what did she say? She said, anyway, I don't remember what she said, like a one-word response. But anyway, that was very funny. I wish I could see.
Well, she also said, "My shoulder is here for you anytime," and I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, to cry on, of course.
Okay.
Oh yeah, she says, "Captain." He says, can I take off the uniform for a moment?" And she says, "Captain." Anyway, look, it's time. We better not talk about scoring and getting into the home run of the episode. Cirroc Lofton, who gets the home run of today's episode, in your opinion?
I'm going to give it to the guest actor who played Kamala. I thought that she did a great job. What is her name again?
Famke Janssen, or Jensen.
Famke Janssen.
Yeah, she's a Dutch actress. Famke Janssen.
Okay, Famke Janssen was captivating, beautiful, and just did a great performance overall. It was interesting enough that with her performance, I was still watching. And she was able to have chemistry with everybody who she interacted with on this show. As far as the regular cast members, with her chemistry with Data, her chemistry with Worf, her chemistry with Riker, and with Picard, I thought were all fantastic. And so, yeah, she is the home run hitter.
Yeah, I agree. She's the one. I didn't think she was going to be, because I remember her being in this episode, but I barely remember the episode that much. I kind of just remember the point of it, and I didn't realize how much she really carried this episode in a lot of ways, and that there was so much more depth to her character than I expected, or that I remembered. So I was surprised we're towards the end. I was like, wow, she's really just carrying this episode. Patrick Stewart was great, of course, as usual. But yeah, home run of the episode to Famke Janssen, of course. All right, here are some other people that can carry things. Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman Tom, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Titus Muller, Dr. Muhammad Nora, Neil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, aka Crewman Guy, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manasfi, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Chris Sternick, Greg K. Wickstrom, Cassandra Gerard, Chuck A., Chris Garris, and of course, Jason M. Oken. All right, everybody, stick around. We will be right back with way more of this stuff on the Seventh Rule. Free for all next. Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton. This is the Free for All with Melissa Longo.
Hi there.
In her cool Women of Sci-Fi shirt, by the way. Jason M. Oken is here. He's got a cool background, as always. Cassandra G. has joined us. Allison Leach Hyde has an awesome Voyager documentary shirt. Good timing. Got mine. Mark Zutkoff will say funny things, maybe. Chris and April are in an RV in Northern California, and we're all jealous. TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri just changed his name to 257.4. Harry Schwent is also known as Crafty Bear. Greg Kenzo is in Hawaii, and Chris McGee is the answer when people say, "Who are 5 people that have never been in my kitchen?" I'll cut that out. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
I don't know. I'm just going to say 7-4. Around a 7-4.
Mark Eaton style. Mark Eaton got it. That's also Victor Wembanyama nowadays. Or no, he's 7-3. 7-3-4. Anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know?
I'll go 7-2.
7-6. 7-3 because rom-com.
7.8, but just because I'm a fangirl, I would say 7.8, but I'm sure it was somewhere between 7.2 to 7.5.
Ooh. You guys are all tickling around it. You nailed it. You guys are right. Melissa knows 7.3.
Yeah, Greg got it.
Greg got it.
Greg, good work.
Nice.
Excellent.
I just did the Price is Right method. One less than
Just looked it up on IMDb. All right. Did we get any non-appearance mentions? I didn't catch any. Okay. What about some kind of or some sort of Chris McGee?
Sure enough, we did get one. Ambassador Brienne at one point said, "Is this some sort of bribe?"
Oh, yes. Good one. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Melissa Longo, will you please get us started off on the right track by telling us what you thought of this particular episode?
Yes, I actually enjoyed this particular episode. It did leave me feeling a bit sad, and I will tell you why in a minute, but I will tell you why I did enjoy this episode, because I would have to say that this is a character study, obviously, of both Picard and Kamala.
We did the same.
Which means lotus in Sanskrit. I had to look it up because I think it's such a pretty name. But anyway, yeah, and I love character studies. I think they're probably my favorite episodes. Yes, there could be some cringeworthy stuff, and I definitely have some nitpicks. But I love that we get to see that Kamala brings out this side of Picard that we don't normally get to see. She brings out his kindness. We get to see it in a way that, yeah, as I said, we've never really seen before. And I love that there's a contrast in the way different cultures approach relationship, and then, you know, ownership in a sense of other people. I love that that we got to see Kamala's, not only her outer beauty, because she is stunning and the dress that she wears is stunning. I want that flowy dress, but we also get to see her intelligence and her curiosity and her wit and her charm and so many things that make us who we are. There's a warmth about her that transcends what she tries to be for other people. Whether, even though she's a metamorph and she's an empath, she's definitely her own person. And I think Famke, her first acting role out, held her own against Patrick Stewart, who was fantastic in this. And she was equally as fantastic. I think they both did really well. I think they both had a lot of great chemistry together. And then on the flip side, I loved seeing Jean-Luc's relationship with Beverly and their friendship. And I love the way that Star Trek explores these relationships, Beverly and Jean-Luc and Troy and Riker, in a non-possessive way. These friendships are authentic. They're not trying to own anyone. They're not trying to impose their ownership onto anyone. They're free to be who they are and explore life in a very organic and natural way. And I love that. I do think I will provide one little nitpick. I did think that the Ferengi storyline was a bit distracting, and I think I would have maybe liked to have seen Troy, since she's an empath too, have sensed that maybe Kamala was in that stasis field, and being both empathic, that she sensed that that's how it was revealed. They could have used Troy in that way rather than the Ferengis, because that felt a little bit contrived to me. So
cool, thank you. Is it Famke? That's how she pronounces it?
Famke.
Oh, see, I was always saying Famke.
That's the Dutch. I was just
that's the right way then.
A YouTube video, because I was like, I don't know how to pronounce it. So yeah, Famke.
Got it. Thank you very much. And also, we all keep saying Kamala instead of Kamala because we've been kind of conditioned to say Kamala. Just the same way now, Every time I meet someone named Melissa, I accidentally call them Melissa. I can't get that out. Anyway, this has been Names on the Seventh Rule. Thank you very much, Melissa Longo. Jason M. Oken is here. What do you think of this one?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Just look, a lot of different episodes, sort of your view of it changes over time. It's one thing to see this sort of as a pretty young person, and you sort of get different things from it as you get older. One thing that unfortunately did not get better for me is the Ferengi storyline. They're written as sort of these mustache twirling villains in a sort of a laughing way, and it's actually written that way. I mean, they performed exactly what's on the page, which doesn't do the show a lot of justice, and I think that's what Armin was talking about, a number of times when he went to deep space, to kind of reverse some of that. And you see some of it here. It certainly was not necessary. I think, Melissa, you mentioned, Famke Janssen's sort of first acting role, and she certainly held her own. I mean, Patrick is terrific in it. Now, and it's just, it kind of a captivating. I mean, one of the sort of, I'm just calling them downsides, but the episode is kind of slow and prodding in a way, and it's very, it's shot in a very kind of stationary way. Maybe it helps you to kind of stop and look at this, because you sort of are with the actors, and the camera sort of kind of bolted to the floor, and you're kind of looking at them for almost 42 minutes. So you get to experience things with them, and I think Patrick's performance is magnificent. And I think in a way, this kind of a show couldn't have been done in the first season, maybe not even in the second season, because the characters have to sort of earn it. You have to be with the characters for so many years. I mean, that Crusher-Picard relationship, it pays off only after a few years. Otherwise, it just doesn't seem to work. So I think overall, it's an enjoyable episode. It does sort of bring back different tones from other things we've seen even in the original series. Anything from Alon of Troyes, even Mudd's women to a degree, and something has been tried again on Enterprise in a very, very bad way in Precious Cargo. That's an awful episode. So I think it sort of reached a very sort of happy medium here. It's certainly enjoyable to watch, and it's kind of to sit down, kind of slow down a little bit. There's a lot more to say. I'll save it for later, but it's certainly a worthy episode to watch.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Jason M. Oken. All right, Cassandra G. What do you think of this one? Do you love it?
I do like it. I am a huge Famke Janssen fan with her work in English and in Dutch as well. She has a wonderful series and movies in her native language. And but I will say, before I go into why I love this episode so much, I will always say that Star Trek is always beyond its years, right? They're talking about sex trafficking and human trafficking, right? Like, let's be honest with this. But I do love the fact that she imprinted on Jean-Luc Picard. And it wasn't just like, oh, here's a guy I like. No, like they had a lot in common. Like she read and saw tons of things throughout her life. And he himself, as an archaeology major and novelist. And so I love that relationship between them, because it wasn't just a guy that she was brought up to meet and was like, here you go, like just love him. Like, even though she did end up marrying what she had to do for her own culture. But I love that aspect of it, that she imprinted on him, and he himself, like, I feel like Jean-Luc really loved her as well, but because of the semantics, of what had happened. And so, yeah, so that's it for me. Like, I love this episode. The Ferengi part, I didn't even like, it's whatever for me, honestly. But I always love seeing them, in the picture, but this was more of a human episode for me. And so anyway, I have a lot more to say, and we'll save that for later.
Thank you very much, Cassandra G. Great stuff, as always. Allison Leach Hyde got her Voyager documentary, Delta Quad Space Tours shirt. It's so cool. What do you think of this one?
I like this episode the more I watch it. As a kid, I was just like, arranged marriage, what? didn't really watch it. But as an adult, I really like it because Kamala's character is really, truly interesting, because we all kind of do this where we'll kind of tailor who we are with the people we're with. You know, we're different with our families. We're different with our children, our parents, our friends, different segment of our friends. And here she's using her abilities to do that, to be, I mean, I don't want to say ideal, but to be the ideal person that this person is talking to. I was only a little upset that they said the line, what was it? Only men would fight over her. I'm like, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of women on that ship that would fight for her too. So just saying, but I understand product of its times. But I really enjoyed that I think she picked to imprint on Picard because she liked who she was with him. And that's who she wanted to be. And so she's like, nope, I'm choosing this and I'm not going to fight it. And this is who I am, and I understand duty. And I think she learned duty from him, from that, what she says. And that's why she was willing to move on and do what she was born and raised to do. And I think that's really interesting. And going through that makes more sense as an adult, because when you're a kid, you're just you. So the idea of being somebody different for each person you see I think is kind of foreign. I love the scene when they're in 10 forward and she is literally changing between the people she's talking to. I think that's really funny. And I have subtitles on my screen because a lot of times I work out while I watch shows. And it said seductive growling when she's growling at work. That's awesome. That is so funny. And I love the idea of Data being her chaperone walking around, because, I mean, you can't win over Data that way because he might be programmed in multiple forms and techniques, but he's not supposed to do it right now, so he's got that. I also thought it was a great show of character for Riker, that he's like, whoa, no. Not okay for me to do this. Don't care if I want to. Don't care if you want to. I'm leaving. So I thought that was great. And of course, as soon as the Ferengi show up, I go, Max! Yeah. You can recognize that face in Ferengi makeup any day. And I still think he had the best line of, do you schedule his appointments to Picard? Happy to see Max, and he was wonderful. So I enjoy this episode more now as an adult than I did as a kid.
Absolutely. That was a fantastic line. Thank you very much, Allison Leach Hyde. All right, Mark Zutkoff, what did you think of this episode? Did you love it?
Well, I thought this episode was okay when it first aired. I don't think I was that impressed with Famke Janssen's performance then. Watching it now, my opinion of it has improved, but still not a favorite. The crew of the Enterprise is just too trusting. Do you just put rescued Ferengi in guest quarters and leave them alone? Ambassador Briam tells Captain Picard to restrict the cargo bay to essential personnel only, but a Ferengi just waltzes in. No wonder a marriage between those two wouldn't have worked. Beverly continues to challenge the captain, and she has a point. But I can't quite categorize this as prostitution, as she says. It's an arranged marriage, which is different. When Picard visits Kamala in her quarters, both characters are facing the camera. Didn't realize at first that Kamala was being reflected in a mirror. Later, Picard visits Kamala in her quarters again, and there's a second mirror shot. This time, Picard is flanked on both sides by a mirror Kamala and a real one, an unusual way to frame these scenes. 10 forward, as Allison said, Famke taking on the characteristics of the alien miners and giving Worf a Klingon-like growl. Great. Glad that Data realized he was being punked and returned quickly to Kamala's side. I loved the scene in Picard's ready room where Kamala plays to the captain's interest in archaeology, a thread that continues to be spun. However, Patrick Stewart seems not particularly good or convincing at being self-effacing. Ambassador Briam is an idiot for telling the Ferengi that he will alert Captain Picard to their plan, and he winds up in a coma for days with all the medical capability of Dr. Crusher and the Federation. Here's irony. The Maltese Chancellor, Ulrich of Valt, is more interested in the trade agreements, while Captain Picard is more interested in Kamala. Speaking of her, what a wedding dress. Apparently, costume designer Robert Blackman was told to create, quote, the most incredible gown a woman has ever worn, but given no indication of what it should actually look like. I'd say he succeeded. Kamala tells the captain she will never truly love Ulrich because she is bonded with Picard. I think she actually bonded with him back in the cargo bay. But if she really understood duty and empathically read Picard's own distress, did she have to tell Picard that she'd bonded with him? There was a deleted scene at the end where Picard stopped the wedding ceremony and took Kamala for his own. And then we see it was Picard's imagination, and he actually stayed silent. They filmed this, and it's on the Season 5 Blu-ray, but I'm grateful they cut it. Finally, we have the stinger at the end where Ambassador Briam asks Picard how he resisted Kamala's charms, and he simply wishes the ambassador a safe trip home and doesn't answer the question, just in case we missed the point. And my home pun of the episode, Kamala was a gift for the Maltese Chancellor. She was like a hunting bird hovering around her prey. Was she a Maltese falcon?
Imagination. Thank you very much, Mark Zutkoff. Great stuff. All right, Chris and April are out roughnecking it in Northern California. What do you think of this episode?
I think Allison, it was great. I think Allison kind of slayed it when she kind of started it. I think she had probably every point that I was thinking about. Kind of, if I had Thunder, I think she stole it all. It was really well. She went into all the different things that I thought were amazing. Probably the only thing that really hasn't been talked about that I admired very much was when Picard was stating, I'm trying to be as dull as I possibly can in the room, and have her, find him as interesting as, at least interesting as possible. I really enjoyed that part. And then, of course, 10 forward like everyone else.
Yeah, that was fun scene. I like that. And I want to like call out Kamala's attitude, and there's an aphorism that I like to use in life for myself and others, where like attitude is really important. Attitude changes everything. It's most of everything. Most of the time in situations, we could choose our attitude that we're going to take. And a lot of times the difference between people's perspectives and their points of view are just the attitude that each has chosen to take. So for Kamala, she could have chosen to have a victim attitude, play the victim and live her life that way. But she didn't. She's a cheerful heart. She knows she's special, and she's duty and service to her people, and she chooses to live that way. So
and she was given to have just a good time.
Yeah.
And this little
happy
beforehand.
Yeah, attitude's everything, and I love her attitude, and we can all learn from her attitude.
This has been a really tough episode for me, you guys. But no, Chris and April Sternett, thank you very much. Very good points. Appreciate that. All right, TJ Jackson Bay is out in Missouri. What do you think of this one?
Well, this episode is about a slave trader who calls himself an ambassador. That's what that was Beverly's line anyway. Since Mark stole my other quote, I figured I would open that one. Good quote, Mark. Also, before I really get into it, I'm definitely more afraid of calling Melissa than I am of calling any Melissa. Unravel that one. Okay. Cassandra, yeah, rules to live by. Cassandra hit, on a point that really, really grabbed my attention, this time while I was watching, and it made me question, whether Kamala actually had a choice in this matter, was making a free choice, since she had been basically groomed to be exactly this all her life. And, as soon as, the container opened up and the crew knew what was going on, my reaction at first was like, oh, turn the ship around, not on my ship. You guys, you should have told us it was a person. Like, why are you doing, why weren't you just upfront about this so that we could, know what was going on in our own ship? And to that point, like, okay, Federation, you're the Federation, and this is like the flagship. You don't check what's coming in the ship. You just like, you're gonna give somebody a ride, and they're bringing stuff, and you don't check what it is. I hope you don't do that in your car. Do you do that in your car? You just let people get in and just whatever they got, like throw it in the back seat. Hope I don't get pulled over by the cops, because what is that? I don't know. I don't think anybody's going to pull the Enterprise over though. But I mean, still, like, and that goes to another point. Somebody made is okay, that this not okay. Not only do you not know what it is, but you've been told that it's like sensitive and needs to be guarded. And so like you can't just like, I mean, I can do this in my house with Alexa and tell it, to tell me if there's noise or something. Like you can't do that in the cargo bay of the flagship of the Federation. Like, hey, if somebody comes in here that isn't supposed to be in here, let security know so we can, not have them in the cargo bay for really a long time, stacking crates, climbing up, and doing all kinds of things before we catch them. But okay, there's that. What I took away from this, though, with them, carrying on, with the mission after learning what was going on, was acceptance. And the Federation is really good at acceptance, almost to a fault, right? They'll do anything, for peace. They'll just kind of bend over backwards for people, to a point, to respect, somebody else's traditions, somebody else's ways. They have the prime directive. We're not going to interfere. And, so, I've been kind of waging a battle in my head, like, okay, how far do I go with my acceptance? Because I can accept you, but sometimes I'm just not going to accept that in my house or in my space. I'm going to remove myself from that situation. Not because I'm judging you, but like, no, sometimes. And, so that's what this episode, left me thinking about. And, that's a thing that Star Trek does well, when you can, set aside your biases and look at what's going on. That was my takeaway from this. Okay, acceptance, but how far do you go? I got a lot more to say. And so, I mean, one thing I do want to point out, and Mark kind of talked about this scene a little bit, the wedding scene. What really struck an emotional tone with me was the music that was playing as the camera is just on Picard's face, and you can see like the thoughts going through his head. You can, Kamala talked about the barriers that he put up, and I'm very sure that they were up then, or he would have carried out that kind of fantasy, rescue, kind of situation that was in the cutscene. But I mean, I thought the music for that was perfect, and just nothing else actually needed to be done. It was perfect. Just look at Picard's face, Patrick's acting carried the scene. I mean, the wedding's going on. Like, I was like, kind of whatever with this wedding. The dress was beautiful, sure. Patrick was the scene there, and so there's that. I got a lot more to say. Like I said, I'll say it later. Things left unsaid.
Thank you very much, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri. That was very ebullient. Just learned that today.
Yeah, $5 for that word, man.
Carrie Schwent is here. What's up, Carrie Schwent, aka Crafty Bear? What'd you think of this one?
I like this episode a lot. I'm a major Famke fan, and as I was putting together my notes, it occurred to me that it feels like a TOS episode, in a couple of ways. In a good way, in the way that I'm with Walter, I'm very much starting to appreciate more of the original series, but in the other way of the concept doesn't age terribly well, but I still enjoy it. That said, yeah, Famke and Patrick do a fantastic job in the scene. They've got a great, what I thought of as like a subtle chemistry. It's not over the top. It's relaxed, kind of like the way Picard and Beverly are sometimes. That just sort of relaxed, easy chemistry. And you can have friends you can talk to like that, but you can't still disagree and still be friends. Like that first argument they were having back and forth, but then later they had the normal conversation. But back to Pumpkin and Patrick, we get to see them again, and a lot more of them in the X-Men movies. I realized I'm blocking most of Jean Grey, so I'll cover my camera here for a second. But I love the X-Men movies. I love Famke. I think I saw the X-Men movies before I ever saw her in GoldenEye. And I was also reading online that they offered her the role of Jadzia Dex, but she turned it down. So that would have been
Sirach nailed that one.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see how she would have done with it, but I think it was around the time that they were doing casting in that for the Bond movie that she ended up being in, and she's had a fantastic movie career. She's been in a couple of really good horror movies, House on Haunted Hill especially. Highly recommend that one. And couple of fun things. I mean, yay Max. I'll hop on the Max Love bandwagon because had to get my Ferengi eyes on. And if you're ever in the opportunity to meet him in person, he gives excellent hugs. He is one of the sweetest human beings on the planet. Gives stronger hugs than you would think, given how small the guy is. But he's very, very strong hugger. We get our live action, and the only live action apparently mentioned of Cetacean Ops. Because Jory mentions the dolphins. I'm like, yay, Cetacean Ops. Woohoo. And like Melissa, it was either Melissa or Allison, I can't remember which. Very also proud of Riker. He gets the kissing. She kissed him, so he didn't initiate it. So I'm proud of him there. And then I'm also proud of him for making like a bread truck and hauling buns out of there. I went through several versions of making and I just had it whole buns made sense, and then straight to the holodeck. We will just leave that there. No, I love this episode. I want that dress, the one behind Melissa. I want that dress. That color is gorgeous. The shimmery iridescent sort of look to it. Love that. I've worked at a fabric store, and trying to cut that fabric can be a little bit of a challenge, but she wears it very, very well. And you can see her early modeling career too, that she was doing before she started acting. But she set up the limerick. I went over, rolled through a few ideas on my head, and then I decided, poor Jean-Luc, just his heartbreak and her mentioning about loving Shakespeare. So I decided to kind of combine the two and work a little Shakespeare into the limerick. So see what you guys think of this. When the heart is caught betwixt two old foes, the drum of duty reminds what the brain knows. To succumb spoils the peace. These new desires must cease. The ache this heart feels will ne'er be disclosed.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much. As always, Carrie Schwent. All right. Speaking of beautiful, Greg Kenzo out in Hawaii. What do you think of this one?
Like everybody else, I think I love this episode. It started out where I was like, "Ooh, this is a sex trafficking episode." Like immediately, I think I said that in my mind, and then I wrote it down. And then as it went on, we're like, okay, we're explaining arranged marriages, but they are quite similar when you think about it to Beverly's point, which I'll get to later. But it also speaks to the conundrum that we have today of imposing Western ideologies and morality on other cultures, which, I mean, every sociology and anthropology class will, tell you about that in college. I had the same exact response as Allison when I saw Max. I wrote down Max ! And it's great to see him. He's more eloquent in this, even though he's pretty scummy. His character is pretty scummy. Instead of like, "Hey, brother," you get to see him actually say like some lines, and it's great. They ask all the right questions to justify her presence there. Like at first, I have all these questions, like 100 questions at once. Like, oh, what are they going to do here, and here to justify her presence there? Picard asks, "You do this of your own accord?" ? She responds, "I was born for it." And I was like, "Oh, that's not a yes," as Beverly points out during her dinner with Picard. But I have to hand it to the writers because it did allow for a debate on the morality of arranged marriages, which is what Star Trek does best. It poses a question and allows you to form your own opinion, allows people of all ages to form their opinions on these things. Like other people have said, Riker showed some good restraint after they kissed. I like what you said, Carrie, about the hauling buns out of there. He gets a lot of flack for his hookups, but the writers wrote him that way. They wanted a lead, a male lead that they can just stick in a rom-com situation or a romantic situation. And this episode shows why it can't be Picard. It can't be your top in command. He can't initiate with any alien species because it'd just be inappropriate. Or it would be seen as a lot of people as inappropriate. But yeah, I'm not trying to justify this episode that seems pretty much like a male fantasy running wild. Like but it does, in the writer's event, sorry about that, bring more people to the Star Trek fandom, and it could be seen as doing more good than harm. Almost finished. I like that Picard learns new information from Beverly, and she persuades him to delve deeper into the situation. It shows that Picard's a great leader. Leaders don't know everything. They listen to their advisors. They listen to everybody. They have an open mind, and that's key to being a great leader, in my opinion. It's also, they say that it's dangerous for her to leave her quarters, but the first place we go to is 10 Forward. Like, they go straight to a bar. They're like, okay, let's take her there. But that's beside the point. Let's say the Ferengi, I didn't really like their episode, but I think they were used to juxtapose the human behaviors that Starfleet have left behind against their current selves. Extreme greed and sexism, treating women like property, makes what Picard and Riker do seem less than what it is. And yeah, to end Patrick's delivery of the line, nothing lies beneath, made me laugh out loud. So yeah, it's good to give him some comedic lines every now and then. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks very much, Greg Kenzo. They breed them right out in Hawaii. All right, Chris McGee is the Dark Lord. He's in someone's kitchen. What do you think of this one?
Well, I consider The Perfect Mate to be a good episode. I echo everyone else's sentiment about it. It has good drama and is well acted, including Famke's and Stewart's fantastic performances. My goodness. My single, relatively minor complaint about the episode is one that I see now in a different light than when I was much younger in the 1990s. And after hearing everyone else's thoughts, this one might be unpopular. Star Trek is famous for the morality tales in its stories, one of which has to do with accepting people for who they are rather than how we might want them to be, or who we might want them to be. Galaxy's Child comes to mind as an episode that drives this point home. And yet, in this episode, we have a character that undermines that idea, effectively the embodiment of male fantasy, becoming whatever the man wants most. And I mean male fantasy because we only see Kamala interacting with men on this ship, never with women or any LGBTQ crew members. So yeah, watching this episode now, having long since abandoned my teenage male fantasy views, I hope, I think the idea behind this metamorph character maybe could have been written or executed a little better. Mark recognized the same nitpick I observed about the Ferengi in the cargo bay. We do see Ensign Kellogg in the cargo bay with Worf's security team. I'm sorry, I don't have the photo to pop up for that. I'm not on my usual setup right now. And As Ryan has observed, I've learned a couple of new words from this episode. Prevarication, intentionally vague or ambiguous, and ebullient, joyously unrestrained. Oh, and I love that this episode helps to convey the deep friendship that has developed between Picard and Dr. Crusher all this time. Memorable quote of the episode is it's what stuck out to me, and that is from Riker saying, "I make it a policy never to open another man's gift."
Definitely stuck out with Riker. Thank you very much, Chris McGee, the Dark Lord. Jake's final take. Yeah, you ran to holodeck 4. Jake's final take. Any final thoughts on this one, Sirach?
He went to holodeck 4 to open some gifts, I think. I thought it was interesting that one of the subjects matter of this conversation in this episode was trade agreements, and that we're actually going through trade agreements right now. So I thought that was interesting. Just again, Star Trek uses language and uses terminology that stays relevant and can still in the headlines today. So I thought that was interesting. I think this Kamala character, she was one bad mother Famka. Because she killed it. We got a mention of a ballpark in this episode, which was a little slight baseball reference. I think that's a little Michael Piller shout out. Just we get baseball wherever Michael Piller is. And so I think wherever he can squeeze it in, he does. And I felt like that was because of him. I couldn't for the life of me figure out what the Ferengi was doing standing on all of those boxes.
Yeah, me too.
Like, what was your plan exactly? I just couldn't get it. I figured if you were going to steal it, you would have some kind of thing to steal it with. I thought at first he was getting the cylinder because he was going to put it in the cylinder and try to, smuggle it. I just standing on top of those boxes only set up the kicking down of the thing, but it just felt weird to me. When Dr. Crusher says to him, to John Luke, she says to him, about that shoulder that he might need. She said, it's there for you, Jean Luc. It always has been. I was like, are we still talking about a shoulder here? Okay. But it does speak to the nature of the relationship. I did like that moment with them. And then, this episode, I thought about a twist that could be done on this episode, and that would be if it was actually a different character, and that would be like if this gift was actually a male gift to a female leader, and how that episode would play out amongst the female characters of the cast. I just played that out in my head a few times. And then I really loved the shot of Captain Picard backing out slowly out of the room, where he kind of takes steps backwards and he moonwalks out of there because he's like, I can see myself getting written up to HR for this moment. So let me just get out of here while I'm safe. So I really like that backup moment. And that's pretty much it. This episode did lead to one song that came out, which was Simply Trill Resistible. All right, no, that's good. That was it.
No, that was very good. I liked it.
That was for you.
All right. Great stuff as always. That's it for us, everybody. Make your own Trill song puns or Riker Holodeck 4 jokes in the comments below and to your friends. And thank you very much to Chris McGee, Greg Kenzo, Carrie Schwent, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Chris and April Sternett, Mark Zutkoff, Allison Leach-Hyde, Cassandra G., Jason M. Oken, Melissa Longo, for myself, Sirach, Melissa, and Mr. Aaron Eisenberg. We really appreciate you all, and we want to wish you an awesome day. We'll see you next time on The Seventh Rule.